It was a calm Sunday morning, the kind of morning that usually smells of coffee and quiet routine. My 7-year-old son, Ethan, sat at the table, his little legs swinging beneath the chair, while I flipped pancakes. My wife, Claire, hadn't come home the night before. She'd sent a text at 11:03 p.m., "Staying with Mia tonight, don't wait up." It wasn't the first time she'd done that lately, and I'd stopped asking questions I didn't want the answers to. But that morning, as Ethan chewed thoughtfully, he said something that froze me mid-motion. "Dad," he began, voice innocent but unsure, "Mom was crying last night, in a car. There was a man with her. He hugged her." The spatula slipped from my hand and clattered on the counter. "What?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Ethan looked at me, eyes wide, realizing he'd said something wrong. "I woke up and went to the window," he continued softly. "There was a black car by the trees. Mom was in it. She was crying. The man touched her face, like when you used to when she was sad." I forced a smile. "It's okay, bud. Eat your breakfast." But my chest tightened like a fist around my heart. Claire came home an hour later, wearing yesterday's clothes, makeup smudged, her eyes red. "Traffic was bad," she muttered, kissing Ethan on the head but avoiding my eyes. I said nothing. Not a word. I didn't ask. I couldn't. Because if I did, I'd lose the ability to pretend everything was fine. That evening, when she showered, her phone buzzed on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. But after what Ethan said, curiosity burned too hot to ignore. The screen lit up with a message, "I can't stop thinking about last night. You deserve better than him." My stomach dropped. The contact name was T. I didn't recognize the number. I didn't need to. My wife's trembling voice from the night before echoed in my son's words. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I watched. 4 days. The late work meetings, the sudden smiles at texts, the excuses about catching up with friends. I acted normal, cooked dinner, helped Ethan with homework, kissed her goodnight even as my heart sank deeper into a sea of quiet fury. But inside, I was making a plan. 2 weeks later, she said she had another conference dinner. I simply nodded and wished her good luck. She left wearing a navy dress she hadn't worn in years, her perfume thick in the air. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my jacket and keys. I followed her at a distance, keeping my headlights off when I could. She pulled into the parking lot of a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. The same black sedan my son had mentioned was already there. I parked across the street. My pulse hammered as she stepped out and walked straight into the arms of a man in a gray suit, her boss, Thomas Reed. I'd met him once, when he shook my hand and said, "You're a lucky man, Daniel." Now, watching him touch her hair, the word lucky felt like poison. She laughed softly, her hand brushing his chest, the same way she used to with me. Then she looked around nervously, and they slipped inside. I waited. For 2 hours. Then she emerged, tears streaking her face. He held her shoulders, said something, then drove away, leaving her alone in the parking lot. She stood there, staring at her reflection in his departing taillights, before finally getting into her car. She didn't see me as she passed. But she was crying again. When she came home that night, I was sitting in the living room, the glow of the lamp casting shadows between us. She froze at the door. "You're still up?" she asked, voice brittle. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. She nodded and went to the kitchen. Her hands shook as she poured a glass of water. I could see the guilt in the way she couldn't meet my eyes. I could have confronted her right then. I could have asked why. But I didn't. I just watched her, memorizing every crack in the woman I thought I knew. That night, I lay awake next to her, the scent of another man's cologne faint on her hair. My son's innocent words replayed in my head, "Mom was crying in a stranger's car." The truth was right there, and he'd seen it before I did. The next morning, while she slept, I got up quietly and made breakfast, pancakes again, just like before. But this time, there was no laughter, no warmth. I packed Ethan's school lunch, dropped him off, and didn't go to work. Instead, I drove to my lawyer's office. It took 2 weeks for everything to unravel. I gathered proof, messages, call logs, photos. The night I left the folder on the kitchen table, she came home to find the house half empty. Her voice cracked when she called my name. Daniel? What is this? I didn't answer. She flipped through the papers, her hands trembling. You followed me, she whispered. I looked at her, my eyes calm for the first time in months. No, I said. Our son did. She burst into tears. It was a mistake, she cried. It meant nothing. You cried in his car, I cut in quietly. You cried for him, not for me. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, begging, promising. I didn't stay to listen. Ethan and I moved out that weekend. The new apartment was small, but peaceful. He asked once, "Is Mom coming?" I told him softly, "No, buddy. Not this time." Months passed. Claire tried to reach out, calls, letters, apologies. But every time, I remembered that morning at the breakfast table, my son's innocent confession piercing through her lies. The image of her crying in another man's car haunted me less than the fact that she'd let our boy see it. She'd broken more than a marriage, she'd broken the safe world we'd built for him. And so, I never asked why. Because some truths don't need answers, they just need endings.